Hey everyone, hope all of you had an amazing day and welcome back to Theonopolis, where today we are going to build something that I've been toying around with ever since I finished the first version of the Main Street, and that is going to be trying to build something as historically accurate as I can make it. And I need to preface this video by saying two things. First off, it's not going to be completely historically accurate, because even though structurally wise I'm going to make it as historically accurate as I can make it, detailing wise it might not be as historically accurate because I still need to make it fit in with the rest of Theonopolis. Also, the second point that I need to make before we really get into the building is I am no historian by any means, so if I get things wrong either with the commentary or the building, please point it out to me so that I can learn from it and can take it with me in the next video or even the next build that I make. Anyway, so with that out of the way, let's get into the building, which is an upper middle class home. I wanted to make an upper middle class home, or actually even a middle class home, just because it has like the features of both a lower class home and a higher class slash palace building. Because, well, it's a little bit more representative than just having one of those features. So if you enlarge this building, you can make it into a palace. If you make it smaller and take certain features away, it's a more lower class home. So it's kind of like the perfect middle ground. And also the first feature of this building that I really like, and I can't really explain why, I just really like it, is the courtyard. The courtyard is a little bit the center of the building. This doesn't mean that location wise it needs to be at the center of the building, but let's say if it becomes too hot, you can kind of take refuge from the heat in the courtyard, because the building would just be a heat wave on its own. And so you can take refuge from the heat in the courtyard, because most of the times you could more easily cover the courtyard, or not easily, but you could cover the courtyard so that you can get even more, well, coolness into the courtyard. And also the courtyard kind of functions as like ventilation for the rest of the building, so that does mean that the courtyard is supposed to be a lot cooler than the rest of the building when it becomes too hot. And also if you had like any pets or any like somewhat outdoor activities, let's say if it is too hot and you can't do those activities inside, you kind of go to the courtyard to do those, and any pets would probably be kept in the courtyard. And yeah, I would most likely be found in the courtyard just because of the pets, and because it has like the idea of being outside but not actually having to leave your home. So I think this also shows that I'm a little bit of like a hermit. Yeah, but anyway, I really like this courtyard, actually more so than a palace courtyard, just because it's a little bit more rough. It's not as pristine and perfect, and as I've said before in other videos, I like my buildings to have a little bit more roughness, and I think this building, this upper middle class home, is the perfect example of that. It's pretty, but it's not too pristine and perfect. And it just has all the features that I want in an ancient Grecian building. And it's just the perfect representative of, well, many ancient Grecian buildings. Just with the courtyard and with how all the buildings surrounding the courtyard are orientated towards the courtyard. And I'm saying buildings because I do build this house as two separate buildings almost. You have the more shed-like building to the left and back of the courtyard, which is where we're placing the doors now, which is probably the more work area of the building, where like, I'm going to say servants, but it's probably also like in this household maybe like one slave or something like that, or someone like that, who is probably like doing all the cooking and all that household chores in there. And then you have the main building, which is now to the right, is where probably the household or the actual family that owns the house lives. So again, the more household chores on the right side or left side, I'm going to confuse those countless times, but the more household chores on the left side in a more shed-like building, where maybe like one slave or just the servants would make the family be able to survive. And then on the right side with the main building where the actual family lives. So it's actually a very clear divide between those two kinds of people. That's, in my brain, sounds really wrong, but that's, I think, really how it was. That there was just a clear divide between those two. And all the entrances to those buildings are from the courtyard, so again, you didn't have to enter the building through the courtyard because, well, in a palace, like, more buildings are going to be surrounding the courtyard, so then, like, here the courtyard is only enveloped by buildings on, almost 3 sides. I would say 2.5, but in, like, a palace it would probably be completely surrounded by buildings. But I like the idea of just entering the building through the courtyard. Gives a little bit more grandeur, I would say, to the building. I'm probably misusing and mispronouncing that word entirely. But anyway, so now we are at the main building, as I would say. And the idea was definitely that more time and more money was spent into this building because this is where the actual family lives. This is where the actual, let's say, if you had guests, would actually go there instead of, well, this shed-like building. They might go into the courtyard. Probably with the size of this building, they would probably kind of stay in the courtyard because it's not that large of a building. Actually, it's kind of small, but I still really like it. And it's a little bit historically accurate when it comes to the size. But anyway, so with the buildings, again, I said beforehand that detailing wise it might not be completely historically accurate because it needs to fit in with Theonopolis. But I have been using those pirate windows a lot. Just because, again, in the previous videos I said that some of those pirate windows, if you turn them around, they are actually see-through. So you only have like the corners of the windows. Which makes it easy because then, especially for, let's say, an ancient Grecian home, you want tiny windows actually, because then, well, those windows are a lot safer, first of all. Like, there's not really a risk that anyone would go through those windows to basically rob you. But also, when it comes to heat, not a lot of heat is going to go into your house. And that was like one of the main things, is just try to keep your house as cool as possible, because Greece can get almost like a volcano. So yeah, keeping your house cool was generally one of the big factors of building your home. So that's why there are a lot of tiny windows. And that's where, like I say, I most of the time go completely off historically accuracy when I build something. Because in game, the Planetcoaster like stucco windows are actually usually way too large. You have like 3 smaller windows, which in ancient Greece would probably be actually considered larger windows. So having those pirate windows, and this might actually be a fault of Frontier that there's no like texture in when you turn them around, but here it really works out well, because again, like, you see me quickly thinking of like, oh, can I use this other stucco window? And then I just see like, no, this is way too large. I need to use these smaller pirate windows. And there's, yeah, I had it correct. There were only 3 smaller windows that could fit with that. Well, there are 3 smaller stucco windows which could fit with the size that you want for an ancient Grecian home. Also, I have noticed that some of these buildings, or at least most of these lower / middle class buildings, can actually be representative of more than just ancient Grecian homes. Because this might just be me, but I can really easily also see like early Renaissance Italian homes into them. But that was not the plan that I went out with. But I mean, if you want to use them for like an Italian park or an Italian early Renaissance park, yeah, you could probably also use these buildings. But they are actually supposed to be ancient Grecian lower / middle class homes. Although this one, as I said, is going to be upper middle class homes. I'm probably going to mispronounce, or not mispronounce, but missay it and just say upper class home, because upper middle class home is kind of a mouthful, at least to me. But the most important thing to this building is actually making it feel alive. Like, that's always like an important thing to, or at least for me, to make the building feel alive. Because, well, without plants, without, well, not rubble, but what is it? I forgot the name. But without just clear signs that people live in it, it just feels dead. And I don't like dead buildings. Like, that's the one thing when I like look in the workshop and I see just, you know, I see a very pretty building, but there's no like signs that people actually live in it. Then I'm like, I want to just put stuff in there. So like for an ancient Grecian place, it would be like a lot of pots and a lot of, well, just things that show that people live in it. So yeah, that's kind of like my thing when it comes to building homes, especially homes like this, because with a palace you would kind of expect it to be a little bit more clean and a little bit more neat, because those palaces usually have like almost a whole army of servants and slaves to keep the house tidy. But here, well, this household probably had like maybe access to one slave or like a couple of servants, maybe like one or maybe max 3, I would say, maximum. But most likely maybe 1, and then the rest would be done by the, well, the woman of the household, because yeah, men didn't really do a lot of household duties. They mostly spent their time, well, making, either doing like the business side or all those other sides to a household in ancient Greece. The mothers or the women of the household most likely did all of the like household chores and all those kinds of things. But anyway, so again, trying to make the house look lived in. So I basically just put one small flower basket at the entrance of the courtyard. And again, I really just like how the courtyard turned out. And this is one thing where I am going to completely say I have no idea why this is, but I saw, and this is referenced from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so again, the building might not be historically accurate, and then I might also not reference it from a completely historically accurate source. But in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, when you had like the smaller buildings that are surrounding the courtyard, some of them have just the roofs going inwards towards the courtyard and not having like that slope on the other side. And I had no real like idea why this is. Like the 2 ideas that I have for this are that it is either more aesthetically pleasing and a little bit more, well, easier with cash, because then you don't also have to have like all the tile and all the construction work to make it also slope outwards on the other side. And maybe like this is completely out of the box thinking, but maybe if it rains, then you could more easily catch the water in your own home, because all of the water for your home needs to be brought in from outside of the home. Because plumbing, well, there was a little bit of like plumbing, but that was most likely for like bathhouses and such, not for just your average upper middle class home. And yes, I'm going to be saying that a lot, so just that I, for the next video, because I said that we're going to build a kiddie coaster this video, but I got into a squirrel mode by trying to build something realistic, and now I can't stop. But I think you guys know that about me by now already, so yeah. Next video I'm also going to start with building well, not start, I'm actually going to continue with building another somewhat realistic home. But anyway, I said that most or all of the entrances to the building were in the courtyard, but then I just thought like, no, I want to also have like an entrance for like servants or slaves, or just a back entrance, so that if you like, let's say you have guests over and you need to get water or something, that you don't have to run through the guests. You can actually go through the back door and get water or get some kind of goods. And I just thought like, alright, I want to have something on the back of this building, and well, a back entrance makes a little bit more sense here than making an extension to what is definitely like the servants' quarter or slaves' quarter. Because yeah, even though I really like ancient Greece, I can still say that like some things in like their culture is a little bit weird, or at least not as good, but that's by today's standards. So back then, of course, that thought wasn't really there. I mean, it could have been there, but it was definitely in the minority. Anyway, so for the rest of the building, because, well, most of it is actually finished, but I wanted to also have something that would make it functional in-game, because most of the buildings that I built have zero function in Planco besides looking pretty. And I thought like, alright, this is an upper middle class home, so this might be either a well-to-do merchant or some craftsman that does well. And so I thought like, alright, this could have an extension where their shop or their, well, basically where they do things that would make, well, that would be their career, could be, or they could have an extension which they have rented out towards someone else. So in this version of the building, I make, well, in this building, I make a little bit of like a shop area to the back of the building. You could also make this in the front of the building, but I didn't want to spoil that, well, nicer looking front of the building. So I basically just built a little bit of like a shop in the background or in the back of the building, so that, you know, a well-to-do family could either rent this place out, which is the more likely thing to do, or they could actually work in this place themselves and, you know, sell what they make, which most likely was done by the man of the household. But I also, for where this building is going to be, I didn't want to make a shop in it. But if you guys want to make a shop in it, you basically just have to remove 8 planks and then you have a clear shop front. But because this building, well, the back of the building isn't going to be connected to any roads, I didn't see a reason to actually put a shop in there. So just let's say the storytelling behind this is that they recently just closed the shop because they were, well, they didn't need it anymore as a source of income. Which is a little bit weird of a thought, but let's just go with that. Now back to the courtyard, because I wanted to have some life in the courtyard. Like, that's the most important thing to buildings for me sometimes. And I thought like, alright, there will probably be a shrine to some kind of like deity of the home, such as Hestia, or yeah, I think her name is Hestia, because again, I'm a squirrel and I'm horrible with names, but most of the times I remember ancient Grecian gods and goddesses names or deity names. But there would most likely be like some kind of shrine to a deity that protects or cares for the home. So let's think that this is like a small shrine to Hestia, and then maybe the man or some male member of the family is off to war, so there's a shield there so that they could also pray to keep that family member safe. Like, just all these small thoughts of like, how would the people in this house be living, and then you can work off of that and make the building actually look lived in. Also, because the courtyard is like the only real place where you can really have like a garden in this building, I just wanted to have like a small little patch of greenery and such. Not that well kept that it's like more reminiscent of like a palace garden, but just like, oh, just some area that is designed to just hold plants and look pretty. And also because the courtyard needs to be a little bit of a cool place, having like that, I don't think I could call it a canopy, but just this overhanging wood structure with plants on it, so that it provides even more shadow and less heat. And then basically just finishing off the rest of the building. I'm not going to do most of the lighting on screen because I don't usually do that, so I'm not going to do that, but most of like all the, well, plants right outside of the home. Please, if I forget to do this, do remind me, but I'm going to try and place this building on the workshop because it's actually a pretty small building. I think it's by the end 500 to 700 pieces. And that really shows that for once I tried to make something simple and it actually worked out simple and small. But without looking dead or just, well, tiny. and it's somewhat historically accurate with the courtyard, the orientation of the buildings, and just how everything is supposed to function. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. And then using some of the, well, how would I call it? Just pieces of cloth to give a little bit of color to the building. But now we are starting, and sadly not finishing in today's video, but we are starting on another building which is also supposed to be somewhat historically accurate. But as you can see, the footprint of this building is huge compared to the other building, but it still follows the same idea, it's just larger. So the idea was to make some kind of like, I wouldn't say apartment complex, but generally have that idea of that. So it can be a palace, but the idea when building it wasn't that, because, well, the other building was an upper middle class building, and they rented out a space for maybe another shopkeeper, or they had a space for themselves. So with this building I just thought like, alright, maybe for like lower class citizens, so let's say a bachelor or a small family, they would probably not own an entire building unless they were well-to-do. But if you didn't really have a lot of money, you would probably rent out some place somewhere else in probably a larger complex. And I wanted to build something that could house a lot of shops and actually be a completely blanco functioning building without looking like, well, how do I say this without offending anyone? Well, some buildings you really just see that they are really just meant to be very functional in blanco. So the idea for this building, and sadly we're not going to finish it because, well, it would have taken, well, I would say maybe even longer than the other building, but it still looks great. It's really big, so I could easily see this as being a palace, but the idea really wasn't to make a palace. It was really just to make like some kind of like, well, the easiest way to say it is apartment complex, but it's most likely, well, the idea was actually to make it actually three separate buildings that were slowly, when they were, well, built up and got extensions and such, were basically built into one building, and then most likely was rented out to other people so that bachelors and small families could live here before, or when they didn't have enough money to actually build their own home. So yeah, this building is going to be a little bit more functional, and this one is actually going to have shops, though I am not really sure which ones. But yeah, this is basically what I said with, if you take the other building that we built just before and make it larger, it could house a lot more functions. It could be an upper class building, but here again the idea is just that it's sort of like an apartment complex almost. So yeah, I'm really happy with how everything turned out. Again, I say this for the fourth time, but we're not going to be able to finish today, or this building today, because then the video will be 40 minutes long, and then rendering of the video will probably take an entire day, because rendering a 30-minute video already takes quite a lot of time. But yeah, so this building, I wanted to place it closer to the Midas district and the like upper class buildings, just because it's larger, and the Midas district buildings usually are a little bit taller and such, and so that you have like a little bit more of like a gradient, I would say, or just a slow downsizing of the buildings when you go into the outskirts and then get knocked over by the palace, of course. But I really like that it's on the edge of being, well, of being in the Midas district and being on the outskirts, because it's just basically a perfect representation of what I wanted to achieve with this building. That it has like a lot more features of a palace, but you can still see that it is not the upper class of society that lives here. It's probably the lower class actually, because like even today, like unless you have a really fancy apartment, you're most likely well, not lower class, but just the apartments usually cost a lot less. Well, it depends on where you live and how the apartment is, but anyway. So that was generally just the idea for this building. Just make the original building that we started out with larger and see how it works. But yeah, as I said, we are not going to finish it in today's video because you can already see at the time of the video that we're almost closing in on the end. So we're going to finish this building in the next video, and I'm going to try and keep my promise and actually make the kiddie coaster in tomorrow, or not tomorrow's, in the next video, because tomorrow is not going to be a video because then I would go slightly insane. But anyway, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I was not too rambly, and I hope that the buildings were a little bit historically accurate. But again, if I am wrong at any point, either with the commentary or with the buildings, again, please do point it out to me so that I can take that with me for the next video. And because, well, this building is not finished yet, if there's something wrong, please do point it out so that this building can actually already be changed so that it more fits in with an historically accurate building. So anyway, again, hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, don't forget to hit the like button, and I hope to see you back in the next video where we're going to finish this building, and hopefully I will get out of that crazy zone and actually start building the kiddie coaster. So hope all of you have an amazing day. So yes, we are cutting off the video at this halfway point just so that it's a little bit more of an organic cutoff instead of like ending at 60% of the building. So again, hope all of you squirrels have an amazing day, and bye bye.